The waiter refilled the water glass for the third time, and still the chair across from Amara Brooks remained empty. She checked her phone again. 7:47 p.m. He was 47 minutes late. The message she had sent 20 minutes ago still showed as unread. Around her, the soft clink of silverware and the murmur of conversation filled La Fontaine, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Crystal chandeliers cast a bright glow over white tablecloths and fresh roses. Every other table held couples laughing, families celebrating, business partners shaking hands over deals worth more than she would make in 10 years. Amara smoothed down her blue dress, the nicest thing she owned. She had bought it 3 years ago for her cousin's wedding and had worn it exactly twice since then. Tonight was supposed to be special. Her co-worker had set her up with Derek Mitchell, describing him as successful, charming, and ready to settle down. She had not been on a date in 2 years. Between working 60-hour weeks as an executive assistant and helping her mother with bills, there was no time for romance. But when the opportunity came, she had allowed herself to hope. She had spent an hour on her hair, another 30 minutes on makeup she barely knew how to apply, and had scraped together enough courage to walk into a restaurant where a single appetizer cost more than her grocery budget for a week. $5. That was all she had in her small purse. She had planned for her date to cover dinner, as he had suggested the restaurant. Now that $5 felt like a weight pulling her under. The waiter approached again, his smile polite but strained. "Ma'am, would you like to order an appetizer while you wait?" "I am still waiting for someone," Amara said, her voice smaller than she intended. "He should be here any minute." The waiter nodded and moved away, but she caught the look he exchanged with another server. Pity. She had seen that look before many times in her life. The poor girl who did not belong. At 8:02 p.m., Derek Mitchell finally walked through the door. He was handsome, she had to admit. Tall, with styled brown hair and a confident stride. He wore a designer suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His eyes scanned the restaurant until they landed on her, and for one hopeful moment, Amara thought everything would be fine. He sat down across from her without apology. "Amara, right?" he said, not bothering with a greeting. "Yes. I was starting to worry. Traffic." He did not elaborate. Instead, he picked up the menu and began scanning it. "So, Tina from accounting set this up. She said you were pretty." She was not wrong. Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks, unsure if that was a compliment or an observation. "Thank you. She told me nice things about you too." "I am sure she did." He set down the menu. "So what do you do?" "She mentioned you work at Whitfield Industries." "I do. I am an executive assistant." "Assistant to who?" "Mr. Whitfield. James Whitfield. The CO." Derek's eyebrows rose. "You are his secretary?" "Executive assistant," she corrected gently. "I manage his schedule, coordinate meetings, handle correspondence." "So, a secretary." He leaned back in his chair and something shifted in his expression. The warmth that was barely there to begin with faded completely. "I thought Tina said you had an important position." "I do. It is a demanding job." "Right." He picked up the menu again, but this time he was not reading it. He was looking at the prices. Then he looked at her dress, her simple earrings, the small purse she had set on the table. His eyes moved like a calculator adding up her worth. Amara's stomach tightened. "Listen," Derek said, lowering his voice but not enough. Tables nearby could still hear. "I think there has been a misunderstanding. When Tina said she knew someone at Whitfield Industries, I assumed she meant someone with actual status. A lawyer maybe. An executive. Not a secretary. I am not just a secretary. You fetch coffee and book flights. That is what assistants do." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I am a VP at a marketing firm. I drive a Porsche. I own a penthouse downtown. What do you bring to the table?" Amara felt her throat close up. Words failed her. She had faced hard moments in her life, many of them. But something about this, sitting in this beautiful restaurant in her best dress with $5 to her name, being told she was not enough by a man who had kept her waiting for an hour, broke something inside her. "I bring myself," she finally said. Derek laughed again. "That is sweet. Really. But I am looking for someone who matches my lifestyle. You understand." He stood up, pulling out his wallet. For a moment, Amara thought he might at least pay for the water and bread she had nervously picked at. Instead, he dropped a 20 on the table. "That should cover whatever you ordered. Good luck out there." And then he walked away. Amara sat frozen. The $20 lay on the white tablecloth like an insult. Around her, she felt eyes turning, curious glances from other diners who had witnessed everything. The waiter stood a few feet away, unsure whether to approach. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. This was the moment, the one that would replay in her mind for months. Sitting alone at a table meant for two, wearing a dress she could not really afford, holding on to dignity by a thread so thin it might snap at any moment. She reached for her purse, ready to leave, when a voice stopped her. "Amara?" She looked up. Standing beside her table, wearing a charcoal gray suit and an expression she could not read, was James Whitfield. Her boss. The billionaire CEO she had worked for over 3 years. The man whose schedule she knew better than her own, whose coffee order she could recite in her sleep, who had never once looked at her as anything more than a competent employee. He was looking at her now. "Mr. Whitfield," she breathed, humiliation flooding her anew. Of all the people to witness her lowest moment. "What are you doing here?" "I had a business dinner that ended early." His eyes moved to the empty chair across from her, then to the $20 still sitting on the table. His jaw tightened. "Are you all right?" No, she was not all right. She was the opposite of all right. She was falling apart in the most expensive restaurant she had ever entered, and her boss was watching. "I am fine," she lied. "Just a date that did not work out." James Whitfield stood there for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked her completely. He pulled out the empty chair and sat down. "Do you think Amara deserves to find love after being treated so cruelly? Drop a comment and tell us what you think should happen next. And if you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter." Amara stared at her boss as though he had grown a second head. James Whitfield, the man who ran a billion-dollar company, who met with senators and foreign investors, who had once been on the cover of Forbes magazine, was sitting across from her in a restaurant where she had just been publicly rejected. "Mr. Whitfield, you really do not have to stay." "I know I do not have to." He picked up the menu casually as though this were the most normal thing in the world. "I want to." "Have you eaten?" "No, but I was just about to leave." "Then stay. Have dinner with me." He glanced up from the menu, and for the first time in 3 years, Amara noticed his eyes. They were a deep blue, steady and calm. "Unless you have somewhere else to be?" She did not. Her apartment was empty. Her evening was ruined. Her pride was in pieces on the floor. "I cannot afford this restaurant," she admitted quietly. It cost her something to say it, but she was too tired to pretend. "I am inviting you. That means I am paying." He said it simply, without condescension. "Please, Amara. Let me do this." Something in his voice made her stay. It was not pity, which she had expected. It was something gentler. Respect maybe. Or kindness. She nodded slowly. James signaled the waiter, who appeared instantly with a new energy. "We will have the tasting menu for 2. And a bottle of the 2015 Bordeaux." "Right away, Mr. Whitfield." When the waiter left, James turned his attention back to Amara. "I apologize if I am overstepping. You look like you could use a meal. And some company that is not terrible." A surprised laugh escaped her. "You saw everything?" "I saw enough." His expression darkened briefly. "That man was a fool." "He was honest," Amara said, though the words tasted bitter. "He knew what he wanted and I was not it." "Then he is both a fool and blind." James unfolded his napkin and placed it on his lap. "You have worked for me for 3 years. In that time you have never missed a deadline, never made a significant error, and have handled situations that would make most people crumble. Last month, when the Tokyo deal nearly fell apart, you stayed until midnight coordinating between 3 time zones. Do you remember what happened?" "We saved the deal." "You saved the deal. I was in transit. You made the calls. You found the solution." He leaned forward slightly. "A man who cannot see your value after 5 minutes of conversation does not deserve 5 more seconds of your time." Amara did not know what to say. In 3 years, James Whitfield had never spoken to her like this. Their conversations were about schedules and meetings and the occasional brief exchange in the elevator. She knew he was fair, knew he treated his employees well, but she had never expected this. The first course arrived, a delicate arrangement of seared scallops with microgreens. Amara picked up her fork, suddenly aware that she had not eaten since breakfast. "May I ask you something?" James said. "Of course." "Why did you agree to go on a date with someone you had never met?" Amara considered the question. "Hope, I suppose. It has been a long time since I put myself out there. My friend said he was a good person. I wanted to believe her. Hope is not foolish." James took a bite of his food, chewing thoughtfully. I think hope is one of the bravest things a person can have. It takes courage to believe things can be better. Is that what you believe? Some days more than others. He smiled and it transformed his face. The serious CEO she saw in the office melted away, leaving someone warmer, more human. Today, watching that man walk away from you, I believe that people often do not recognize what is right in front of them. They ate in companionable silence for a while. The food was extraordinary, each course better than the last. Amara felt herself relaxing, the tension of the evening slowly releasing from her shoulders. Tell me something about yourself, James said as the main course arrived. Something I would not know from your employee file. Like what? Anything. What do you do when you are not managing my chaos? Amara thought about it. I read. A lot. Mostly fiction, stories about people overcoming impossible odds. I like happy endings. She paused. That probably sounds naive. It sounds hopeful. We have already established that hope is brave. What about you? What does the great James Whitfield do when he is not running an empire? He laughed softly. I build things. Not companies, actual things. Furniture mostly. I have a workshop in my house. It helps me think. You build furniture? She could not hide her surprise. My grandfather taught me. Before he made his fortune, he was a carpenter. He used to say that a man should know how to create something with his hands, something real and lasting. James looked at his own hands briefly. I find it grounding. That is not what I expected. What did you expect? I do not know. Golf maybe. Yachts. I am terrible at golf. And boats make me seasick. Amara laughed, genuinely laughed for the first time all evening. James smiled at the sound. By the time dessert arrived, 2 hours had passed without Amara noticing. They had talked about books and movies, about their childhoods, about small moments that had shaped who they were. James told her about his father who had passed away 5 years ago, and how the loss still felt fresh some days. Amara told him about her mother who had raised her alone after her father left when she was 7, and how Grace Brooks had worked 3 jobs to make sure Amara could go to college. She sounds remarkable, James said. She is. Everything good in me came from her. When the check came, James signed it without looking at the total. Then he stood and offered his hand to help her up. It is late. Let me drive you home. You do not have to do that. Amara. He said her name with such gentleness that she stopped protesting. Please. It is dark and your evening started terribly. Let me at least make sure it ends safely. She accepted. His car was waiting outside, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than her apartment building. The driver opened the door for them and Amara slid inside, still processing everything that had happened. Before I take you home, James said as the car pulled away, would you like to get ice cream? Ice cream? There is a place near the waterfront that stays open late. Best chocolate chip cookie dough in the city. Amara looked at him, this man she thought she knew, and realized she did not know him at all. I would like that. 20 minutes later, they sat on a bench overlooking the harbor, each holding a cone of ice cream. The night was cool, the stars bright above the city lights. Amara licked her cone and shook her head. This is surreal. In a good way, I hope. I'm not sure yet. Ask me tomorrow. James nodded, looking out at the water. I have a confession to make. What? I noticed you a long time ago. Not just as an employee. I noticed how you treat everyone with kindness, how you remember people's birthdays, how you always have a genuine smile even on the worst days. He turned to face her. I thought you were extraordinary long before tonight. Amara's heart skipped. Then why did you never say anything? Because I am your boss. It would have been inappropriate. It still is, probably. He looked back at the water. But watching that man treat you like you were nothing, I could not stand by. You are not nothing, Amara. You are remarkable. They finished their ice cream in thoughtful silence. When James dropped her off at her apartment building, he walked her to the door. Thank you, Amara said. For everything. Get some rest. I will see you Monday. She watched him drive away, then climbed the stairs to her small apartment. She changed out of her blue dress, washed off her makeup and crawled into bed. For the first time in months, she fell asleep with a smile on her face. Amara woke up Sunday morning convinced that Saturday night had been a dream. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, replaying every moment. The humiliation of Derek Mitchell walking away. The shock of James Whitfield sitting down across from her. The dinner, the ice cream, the confession under the stars. She reached for her phone and scrolled through her messages, half expecting to find nothing. But there it was, sent at 11:47 p.m. the night before. From James Whitfield, thank you for the company tonight. I meant what I said. See you Monday. It was real. All of it. Amara spent Sunday in a state of anxious anticipation. She cleaned her apartment twice, reorganized her closet, and called her best friend Olivia to tell her everything. Hold on, Olivia said, her voice sharp with disbelief. James Whitfield. Your boss. The billionaire. Took you out for dinner and ice cream? He did not take me out. He rescued me from a terrible situation. Girl, that is the same thing wrapped in a different bow. Olivia laughed. What did he say? Tell me everything again. Amara repeated the conversation, including the part where James called her remarkable. Olivia made sounds of amazement throughout. So what happens now? Nothing happens. He is my boss. It was one night. One night where he told you he noticed you a long time ago. Olivia's voice softened. Amara, when was the last time someone saw you like that? Amara did not answer. She did not need to. They both knew the answer was never. Monday arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Amara dressed carefully, choosing a green blouse and gray slacks, professional but not trying too hard. She fixed her hair in soft curls and put on minimal makeup. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt endless. When the doors opened, everything looked the same. The same sleek lobby, the same modern artwork, the same view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Amara walked to her desk outside James's office, set down her bag and took a deep breath. His door was closed, which meant he was already inside. She sat down and began going through emails, trying to focus on work. A meeting needed to be rescheduled. A contract required her signature approval. A reporter wanted a comment on a quarterly earnings report. Normal. Everything was normal. Then she noticed the flowers. On the corner of her desk, in a simple glass vase, sat a bouquet of yellow sunflowers. There was no card, no note. Just bright, cheerful flowers that had definitely not been there on Friday. Amara stared at them, her heart beating faster. James's office door opened. He walked out looking exactly as he always did, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, his expression calm and professional. He held a folder in his hand and approached her desk as though it were any other Monday. Good morning, Amara. Good morning, Mr. Whitfield. His eyes flickered to the flowers, then back to her face. The ghost of a smile crossed his lips. I have a board meeting at 10. Can you make sure the conference room is ready? Of course. I will have everything prepared. Thank you. He walked toward the conference room without another word. Amara watched him go, confused and relieved and disappointed all at once. Maybe Saturday night had been a one-time thing. Maybe he had meant everything he said but had decided, in the light of day, that it was best to keep things professional. Maybe she had imagined the spark between them. She turned back to her computer and tried to work. The morning passed in a blur of tasks. Amara fell into her routine. Answering phones, managing schedules, coordinating with other departments. She was good at her job, excellent even. She knew every detail of James's calendar, every preference, every need before he had to ask. At noon her desk phone rang. Amara Brooks speaking. It is James. Her stomach flipped. Yes, Mr. Whitfield? Can you come to my office, please? Right away. She stood, smoothed her blouse and walked the 10 steps to his door. She knocked twice. Come in. James was standing by the window, his back to her, looking out at the city. Amara closed the door behind her and waited. I wanted to talk to you about Saturday, he said without turning around. All right. I overstepped. I know that. You work for me, and I put you in an uncomfortable position. He turned to face her, and she saw something vulnerable in his expression. I am not going to pretend that night did not happen, but I also do not want you to feel pressured or unsafe in your workplace. I do not feel unsafe. Good. He nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I also want you to know that my respect for you has nothing to do with romantic interest. You earned your position here. You are valued here. That will never change regardless of anything else. Thank you. I appreciate that. They stood in silence for a moment. The air between them felt charged, heavy with words neither of them was saying. The flowers, Amara finally said. Were they from you? Yes. He did not try to deny it. Sunflowers seemed right. Bright and resilient. They reminded me of you. Amara felt warmth spread through her chest. They are beautiful. Thank you. You are welcome. Another pause. James took a step closer. I meant what I said Saturday night. Every word. But I also meant what I just said. Your job is secure. Nothing has to change if you do not want it to. What if I want something to change? The words left her mouth before she could stop them. James's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? Amara's heart was pounding, but she had come this far. Saturday night was the best night I have had in a very long time. You treated me with kindness and respect. You saw me when that man made me feel invisible. I do not know what this is or what it could be, but I do not want to pretend it did not matter. James was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then we will figure it out together. Carefully. At whatever pace you need. That sounds good. Can I take you to lunch? I would like that. They walked out of his office together, past the curious glances of other employees, past the sunflowers still bright on her desk. James held the elevator door for her, and when they stepped inside, he stood a respectable distance away. But he was smiling. And so was she. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful. On the surface, nothing at Whitfield Industries changed. Amara still managed James's schedule, still coordinated meetings and handled correspondence, still worked the long hours the job demanded. James still made decisions that affected thousands of employees, still met with investors and board members, still carried the weight of his family's legacy on his shoulders. But beneath the surface, everything was different. It started with small things. A fresh cup of her favorite coffee appearing on her desk each morning, still warm, always perfect. A text message at the end of a long day, hope you got home safe. A brief touch of his hand when he passed her a document, lasting just a second longer than necessary. James found reasons to visit her desk more often. He would ask questions he already knew the answers to, request updates on projects he had just reviewed. Sometimes he would simply stand nearby, pretending to read something on his phone, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Amara noticed. She noticed everything. They had lunch together twice that first week, always at restaurants far from the office where no one would recognize them. The conversations flowed easily now that the initial awkwardness had faded. James told her about his childhood, about growing up with impossible expectations and a mother who valued image above all else. Amara shared stories about her own upbringing, about the small apartment she had shared with her mother, about learning to be grateful for what she had rather than longing for what she did not. You are different from anyone I have ever met, James said one afternoon as they shared dessert at a quiet cafe. Different how? Genuine. Most people in my life want something from me. Money, connections, status. You have never asked for anything. I wanted a steady job, Amara admitted with a smile. That is why I applied to be your assistant. And in 3 years you have never used your position to advance yourself. Never dropped my name, never asked for special treatment. He shook his head. Do you know how rare that is? I was raised to earn what I have. Shortcuts do not feel right to me. See? Different. Remarkable. At the end of the third week, James asked her to accompany him to a charity gala. It is for the Children's Hospital Foundation, he explained. Black tie, about 200 guests. I usually go alone, but I would like you to be there. As my guest, not my assistant. Amara hesitated. A gala meant wealthy people, expensive clothes, judgment from every corner. It meant stepping into James's world fully, not just glimpsing it from the edges. I do not have anything to wear, she said honestly. Let me take care of that. James, I cannot let you buy me a dress. Consider it a thank you for putting up with my impossible schedule. He smiled, that warm smile that made her chest tight. Please, Amara. Let me do this. She thought about the system prompt, about accepting kindness with gratitude, about not refusing help when it was offered with genuine intention. James was not trying to buy her. He was trying to include her. All right, she said. Thank you. 2 days later, a package arrived at her apartment. Inside was the most beautiful gown she had ever seen. Deep red silk, elegant but not ostentatious, with a modest neckline and a flowing skirt. A note was tucked into the box. I saw this and thought of you. Bright and resilient. J. The night of the gala, Amara looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. The red dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves in all the right places. She had borrowed earrings from Olivia, small diamonds that caught the light. She looked beautiful. She felt beautiful. James picked her up in his car, and when she stepped outside, he stopped mid-sentence. Whatever he had been about to say died on his lips. Amara, he breathed. You are stunning. Thank you. The dress is perfect. The dress is just fabric. You are what makes it perfect. The gala was held at a grand hotel downtown, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and waiters carrying trays of champagne. Amara felt eyes on her as they entered, curious glances from men and women who wondered who she was. James did not leave her side all night. He introduced her to everyone. Not as his assistant, not as his employee, but as his colleague. His partner. His equal. "This is Amara Brooks," he would say, his hand warm on the small of her back. "She is invaluable to Whitfield Industries. I could not function without her." People smiled and shook her hand. Some were genuine, others clearly skeptical. Amara held her head high regardless. She belonged here. James had made sure of it. They danced once, a slow waltz near the end of the evening. James held her close but respectfully, his hand steady on her waist. "Thank you for being here," he murmured. "Thank you for asking me. I want you to know something." He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "This is not about the charity or networking or any of the reasons I usually come to these events. I wanted you here because being with you makes everything better." Amara's breath caught. "James? I know we are taking things slow. I know there are complications. But I need you to know how I feel." He paused, searching for words. "You make me want to be better. Kinder. More present. You make me see what actually matters." "You do the same for me," she whispered. They did not kiss. Not there, not surrounded by 200 strangers. But something shifted between them, a silent acknowledgement that this was real. That whatever was growing between them had roots now, deep and strong. Later, in the car on the way home, Amara leaned her head against the window and smiled. "What are you thinking?" James asked. "That I spent my whole life feeling invisible. Like I was just background noise in other people's stories." She turned to look at him. "You make me feel seen. You were never invisible, Amara. The world just was not looking hard enough." He dropped her off at her apartment and walked her to the door. This time, before saying goodnight, he lifted her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Sleep well. You too." She floated up the stairs, still wearing her red dress, still feeling like someone had rewritten the story of her life. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, she believed the ending might be happy after all. The gala changed things. Not outwardly, not in ways others would notice, but between James and Amara, something had unlocked. A door they had been circling had finally opened, and neither wanted to close it again. They continued their lunches, but now they were bolder, choosing restaurants closer to the office. They texted throughout the day, short messages that meant everything. James stopped pretending he needed excuses to visit her desk. He simply came, stood beside her, and talked until someone called him away. The gossip started, of course. Whispers in the break room, curious looks from colleagues. Amara ignored it as best she could. She had done nothing wrong. Neither had James. But she knew that eventually they would have to define what this was. And that conversation terrified her. It came on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the gala. James had asked her to stay late to help prepare for a major presentation. By 8 o'clock, the office was empty except for the two of them. Paperwork covered the conference table, charts and projections and financial summaries. "I think that is everything," Amara said, stretching her back. "You should be ready for tomorrow." "Thank you. You have been incredible as always." She began gathering the papers, organizing them into neat folders. James watched her for a moment, then spoke. "Can I drive you home?" "It is not that late. I can take the subway." "Please." That word again, soft and sincere. "I want to talk to you about something." They rode down in the elevator together, stepped into the cool night air, and climbed into his waiting car. The driver pulled away from the curb and the city lights streamed past the windows. "What did you want to talk about?" Amara asked. James turned to face her. Even in the dim light of the car, she could see the intensity in his eyes. "Us." Her heart stuttered. "All right. I have been careful. We have both been careful. Taking things slow, keeping boundaries, respecting the professional relationship." He paused. "But I need to be honest with you, Amara. I cannot keep pretending this is just friendship. It is more than that, at least for me." "It is more for me too," she admitted. "Then what are we doing? Where is this going?" Amara looked at her hands, folded in her lap. "I do not know. You're my boss. People already talk. If we became something more, something official, my reputation would suffer. Everyone would assume I slept my way to my position. You earned your position. Anyone who matters knows that. But not everyone matters the same way. Perception has power." She looked up at him. "I am not ashamed of what I feel for you. But I am afraid of what it might cost." James reached over and took her hand. His grip was warm and steady. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a woman who has worked harder than anyone I know to build a life of dignity and purpose. I see someone who lights up every room she enters, who treats the janitor with the same respect as the board chairman. I see kindness and strength and beauty inside and out. He squeezed her hand. I see someone I want to build a future with. Tears pricked at Amara's eyes. James? I'm not asking you to sacrifice anything. I'm asking if you will let me stand beside you. If you will let me prove that what we have is worth fighting for. What about your family? Your mother? His jaw tightened. My mother has opinions about everything. That does not mean she is right. She will hate me. She will come around. And if she does not, that is her loss. He lifted her hand to his lips just as he had done after the gala. Amara Brooks, will you have dinner with me? Not as colleagues. Not as boss and assistant. As two people who care about each other. The question hung in the air. Amara felt the weight of it, the enormity of what saying yes would mean. She thought about her mother, who had always told her to follow her heart. She thought about Olivia, who had been cheering her on from the sidelines. She thought about all the years she had spent alone, too afraid to hope for something more. Yes, she said. I would like that. James smiled, and it was like watching dawn break. The next evening he took her to a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood far from downtown. No fancy tablecloths or crystal chandeliers, just checkered napkins and candles and wine bottles. The owner greeted James by name and led them to a corner table. How did you find this place? Amara asked. My father used to bring me here when I was young. Before the company grew, before we had money. He said the best food in the city was made by families who cooked with love, not by chefs who cooked for awards. They ordered pasta and wine. They talked and laughed and learned more about each other than they had in all the weeks before. James told her about his dreams, the ones that had nothing to do with business. He wanted to travel, to see places without an agenda. He wanted to build furniture for his own home, not just as a hobby but as something meaningful. He wanted someday to have a family of his own. What about you? He asked. What do you dream about? Stability, Amara said honestly. For most of my life I dreamed about just having enough. Enough money, enough security, enough peace. She paused. But lately I have started dreaming about more. About happiness. About love. And I think I might have found it. James reached across the table and took her hand. So have I. Are you rooting for Amara and James to overcome everything standing in their way? If this story is touching your heart, subscribe now and leave a comment telling us what you hope happens next. After dinner, they walked along the riverfront, the city skyline glittering in the distance. James told her about a time he had gotten lost in Venice during a business trip, wandering narrow streets until a kind old woman invited him in for tea. Amara told him about the summer she worked 3 jobs to save enough for her mother's birthday present, a weekend trip to the coast that Grace Brooks still talked about. You have given her so much, James said. She gave me everything first. At her apartment door, James hesitated. I want to kiss you, he said quietly. Then kiss me. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. His lips met hers, soft and gentle, a promise rather than a demand. Amara felt something bloom in her chest, something warm and hopeful. When they parted, James rested his forehead against hers. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow. He left and Amara floated inside. Her phone buzzed before she even reached her bedroom. From James, good night, remarkable. She smiled and typed back, good night, builder of furniture. From the living room of her small apartment, the future suddenly looked very bright. 4 months into their relationship, Amara finally met Patricia Whitfield. It was James's idea. He believed that bringing Amara into his family's world would legitimize their relationship, would show his mother that this was serious. Amara was less certain. She will not approve of me, Amara said the night before. They were sitting on the couch in James's penthouse, a space so large and beautiful it still made her uncomfortable. You know that. She does not approve of anyone. That is just who she is. James pulled her closer. But you are important to me. I want you to know my family, even the difficult parts. What if she says something terrible? Then I will handle it. I will never let anyone disrespect you, Amara. Not even my mother. The lunch was held at the Whitfield estate, a mansion in the suburbs that looked like something from a period drama. Amara wore her nicest dress, a deep blue that James had told her brought out her eyes. She held his hand as they walked up the stone steps. Patricia Whitfield was waiting in the formal living room. She was beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful. Polished, precise, and cold. Her silver hair was perfectly styled. Her cream-colored suit probably cost more than Amara's monthly salary. Her eyes swept over Amara in one quick assessment, cataloging every detail. "Mother," James said, kissing her cheek. "This is Amara Brooks." "Yes. Your assistant." Patricia did not offer her hand. "Please sit." They sat on a silk couch that felt like it had never been used. A maid brought tea on a silver tray. Patricia poured with practiced elegance. "So," she said, handing Amara a cup without meeting her eyes. "You have been working for my son for how long?" 3 years, Mrs. Whitfield. "And in that time you decided to pursue a romantic relationship with him?" "Mother," James warned. "It is a fair question." Patricia stirred her tea. "I simply want to understand how this happened. One moment she is answering phones, the next she is dining at the charity gala on my son's arm." Amara set down her cup. Her hands wanted to shake but she forced them still. "I did not pursue your son, Mrs. Whitfield. We developed feelings for each other over time. Our relationship is built on mutual respect." "Respect." Patricia smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "And what exactly do you bring to this relationship, Miss Brooks? What family do you come from? What assets do you have?" "I bring myself. My heart. My commitment to your son's happiness." "How charming." The word dripped with condescension. "James, surely you see the problem here. This woman has nothing. No wealth, no connections, no status. She is unsuitable. She is the woman I love." James's voice was calm but firm. "And you will speak to her with respect or we will leave." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "You would speak to your mother this way?" "I would speak to anyone this way who insults the person I care about." The room went silent. Amara felt the tension pressing against her skin. She wanted to disappear, wanted to run back to her small apartment where everything was simple and safe. But she stayed. She stayed because James was beside her, and because she had learned that running never solved anything. "Mrs. Whitfield," Amara said quietly, "I understand your concerns. I know I am not what you imagined for your son. But I love him. I love him for who he is, not for what he has. I would love him if he lost everything tomorrow." "How noble." "It is just the truth." Amara met Patricia's eyes directly. "I did not ask for this life. I did not seek out your son hoping for money or status. I sought a good job and found a good man. I hope in time you can see that." Patricia said nothing. After a long moment she rose. "I have another engagement. James, I trust you can see yourselves out." She left without another word. James exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. I knew she would be difficult, but that was worse than I expected." "It is all right." Amara took his hand. "She is your mother. She wants what she thinks is best for you. What is best for me is you." They left the estate and drove in silence for a while. Then James turned down an unfamiliar street and pulled up in front of a modest house with a small garden. "Where are we?" "I called your mother this morning. Told her I wanted to meet her." He smiled nervously. "I hope that is all right." Amara's eyes widened. "You called my mother?" "I wanted her to know I am serious about you. I wanted her blessing." Tears pricked at Amara's eyes. After the coldness of the Whitfield mansion, the warmth of her childhood home felt like a different world. Grace Brooks opened the door before they reached it. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair, wearing a floral apron over her Sunday dress. "Amara, baby." She pulled her daughter into a tight hug. "And you must be James." "Yes, ma'am." "It is an honor to meet you." Grace looked him up and down, the same assessing look Patricia had given Amara, but completely different in spirit. Then she smiled. "Well, come on in. I made lemon cake." The next 2 hours were the happiest Amara had experienced in years. Grace asked James questions about his work, his hobbies, his intentions. She showed him baby pictures of Amara, told embarrassing stories about her childhood, made him laugh until his sides hurt. By the time they left, Grace had hugged James 3 times and made him promise to come back for Sunday dinner. In the car, Amara leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what kind of man you really are." James took her hand and held it all the way home. Patricia Whitfield did not give up easily. 2 weeks after the disastrous lunch, she called James into her office at the family's secondary estate, a brownstone in the city where she conducted what she called family business. James arrived expecting another lecture. What he found was worse. His mother sat behind a mahogany desk, flanked by the family attorney and a stack of documents. "Sit down, James." He remained standing. "What is this about?" "Your inheritance." Patricia slid a document across the desk. As you know, your fathers will give me discretionary control over the family trust until you turn 35. That is still 3 years away. I am aware. Then you should also be aware that I have the power to adjust your distributions, your access to the trust fund, your seat on the board. She folded her hands. All of it is contingent on my approval. James felt cold settle in his stomach. You are threatening to cut me off? I am protecting this family's legacy. Your father worked his entire life to build something meaningful. I will not watch it be diluted by an unsuitable alliance. Amara is not unsuitable. She is the best person I know. She is a secretary with no family name, no assets, and no position. She is after your money, James. They always are. She has never asked me for anything. Not once. James leaned forward, his palms flat on the desk. I offered to help her pay off her student loans. She refused. I offered to buy her a new car when hers broke down. She took the bus for 3 months instead. Amara does not want my money, mother. She wants me. Patricia's expression did not change. Infatuation fades. Status remains. Make the right choice. I have made my choice. Then you leave me no option. She gestured to the attorney. Effective immediately, your monthly distributions from the trust will be suspended. Your board seat will be placed under review. Any company assets in your name will be frozen pending evaluation. James stood there processing the words. His mother was actually doing it. She was actually willing to destroy his financial security to separate him from Amara. You would go this far? I would go further if necessary. This family will not be embarrassed by an inappropriate relationship. James looked at his mother, at the hard lines of her face, the determination in her eyes. He thought about his father who had been so different. His father who had fallen in love with a woman his own family disapproved of and married her anyway. Dad told me something before he died, James said quietly. He told me that his biggest regret was letting you change. He said when he met you, you were kind, full of hope. And somewhere along the way, you traded hope for control. He stepped back from the desk. I am not going to make the same mistake. James, keep the money. Keep the board seat. Keep whatever you need to feel powerful. He turned toward the door. I have what matters. He walked out without looking back. That evening he told Amara everything. They sat on her small couch in her small apartment, and he laid out every detail. The threats, the ultimatums, his decision. Amara listened in growing horror. James, you cannot give up everything for me. I'm not giving up anything. I still own 20% of the company directly, from shares my father left me outside the trust. I have savings. I have skills. I will be fine. But your relationship with your mother. My mother made her choice. I made mine. He took both her hands in his. Amara, do you understand? You are more important to me than any amount of money. You are more important than family approval or social status or any of the things I grew up believing mattered. I do not want to be the reason you lose your family. You are not the reason. My mother's need for control is the reason. Her prejudice is the reason. He lifted her chin so she had to look at him. I choose you. I will always choose you. Amara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. What happens now? Now we build something together. Something real. Something that belongs to us, not to anyone else's expectations. That sounds terrifying. It sounds like freedom to me. She leaned into him and he wrapped his arms around her. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet of her apartment, letting the weight of the day settle. I should warn you, Amara finally said. My apartment is very small. There is no room for building furniture. James laughed, the tension breaking. We will figure it out. We always do. The next morning, James went to the office as usual. He expected whispers, expected the news of his confrontation with Patricia to have spread. But the day passed normally. His team treated him the same. His work continued. That evening he received an email from the company CFO. Subject, regarding recent changes. Mr. Whitfield, your mother has requested that I implement certain financial restrictions. However, after reviewing your direct holdings and employment contract, I have determined that these restrictions fall outside her authority. Your salary, benefits, and shareholder distributions remain intact. Additionally, I want you to know that many of us have worked with you for years. We believe in your leadership. Whatever personal matters are occurring, they do not change our professional respect for you. Best regards, Michael. James read the email twice. Then he picked up his phone and called Amara. It is going to be okay, he said. How do you know? Because good people exist. And because we have each other. On the other end of the line, Amara smiled. 6 months passed. 6 months of stolen moments and quiet dinners. 6 months of learning each other's rhythms, discovering the small things that made them who they were. James learned that Amara hummed while she cooked, that she read the last page of books first because she hated surprises, that she cried at commercials with puppies. Amara learned that James talked in his sleep, that he secretly loved reality television, that he kept a photo of his father in his wallet and touched it whenever he needed courage. They built trust the only way it can be built, one day at a time. James took Amara to his childhood home, a sprawling house in Connecticut that had been closed since his father's death. They walked through dusty rooms and overgrown gardens, and he told her stories about every corner. This is where I broke my arm trying to climb the oak tree. This is where my dad taught me to ride a bike. This is the workshop where we built my first bookshelf together. The workshop was exactly as his father had left it. Tools hung on pegboards, sawdust still coated the floor, half-finished projects lined the walls. James stood in the doorway, his eyes glistening. I have not been in here since he died. Amara took his hand. We do not have to stay. No. I want you to see it. I want you to know this part of me. He stepped inside, running his fingers over a workbench. He used to say that building things with your hands taught you patience, that you could not rush good work. He sounds like he was a wonderful man. He was. He would have loved you. James turned to face her. He always said I should find someone who made me better. Someone who challenged me to be more than just my name or my money. And I found her. Amara kissed him then, softly, in his father's workshop, surrounded by the ghosts of things half-built and dreams half-realized. As the months continued, she introduced him more fully to her world as well. Sunday dinners at Grace's house became a tradition. They would sit around the small table, eating homemade food and sharing stories. Grace asked about James's work, about his plans, about when he was going to propose already. Mama, Amara would groan, embarrassed. What? I'm not getting any younger. I want grandbabies while I can still chase them. James would smile and squeeze Amara's hand under the table. The question of marriage hung between them, unspoken but present. He knew he wanted to marry her. He had known for months. But he also knew that Amara had been hurt before, had built walls to protect herself. He did not want to rush her. He wanted the moment to be perfect. In the meantime, they navigated the complications of their situation. James had restructured his role at the company, making himself less dependent on the family trust. He worked longer hours, proved his value independently of his mother's influence. Slowly, the board members who had been uncertain began to respect him on his own merits. Patricia remained cold and distant. She did not come to the office often anymore. When they did cross paths, she acknowledged James with a curt nod and said nothing. Do you think she will ever accept me? Amara asked one evening. I do not know. But I have stopped needing her approval. James pulled her closer on the couch. My father used to say that you cannot control other people's hearts. You can only control your own. I choose to fill my heart with love for you, not anger toward her. That is very wise. I have my moments. Amara leaned into him, feeling safe in a way she had never felt before. Tell me about our future. Our future? Yes. What do you see? James was quiet for a moment, considering. I see a house. Not too big, but with enough room for a workshop. A garden where you can grow the herbs you are always buying at the store. A kitchen with good light where we can cook together on Sunday mornings. What else? I see children someday if you want them. Little ones with your smile and my stubbornness. I see us growing old together, still holding hands, still laughing at my terrible jokes. Your jokes are pretty terrible. See? You will have decades of material to work with. Amara laughed and the sound filled the room. That sounds like a beautiful future. It is ours if we want it. I want it, she whispered. I want all of it. James kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Then we will make it happen. Together. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds sat wrapped in possibility. The future was uncertain, as all futures are. But they faced it together, and that made all the difference. The annual Whitfield Industries Investor Gala was the event of the social calendar. Every major player in the business world attended. Executives, politicians, celebrities, and old money families who had been wealthy since before the city was built. It was held at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, a venue so exclusive that reservations were booked years in advance. James hated these events. The fake smiles, the calculated conversations, the endless posturing. But as CEO, his presence was required. This year, for the first time, Amara would be by his side as his partner, not his assistant. She wore a maroon gown that cascaded to the floor, elegant and striking. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo, and small diamonds sparkled at her ears. James could not stop looking at her. "You are staring," she murmured as they walked into the ballroom. "I cannot help it. You are the most beautiful woman in this room. Flattery will get you everywhere. That is the plan." The evening began smoothly. They circulated through the crowd, greeting investors and board members. Amara had grown comfortable in these settings over the past months. She knew how to make small talk, how to navigate the social dynamics, how to hold her own among people who had once intimidated her. Then she saw him. Derek Mitchell stood near the bar, laughing with a group of men in expensive suits. He held a whiskey glass in one hand and gestured broadly with the other, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. Amara stopped walking. James felt her tense beside him. "What is wrong?" "That man. By the bar. That is Derek Mitchell." James followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. "The one who humiliated you at the restaurant?" "Yes." They stood there for a moment watching Derek work the room. He had not noticed them yet. Amara felt her stomach churn with a mix of emotions: anger, embarrassment, and something else she could not name. "We can avoid him," James said. "This event is large enough." "No." Amara straightened her shoulders. "I'm not going to hide. I have nothing to be ashamed of." They continued into the room, heading toward a group of friendly board members. But before they could reach their destination, Derek spotted them. His face lit up with recognition, then confusion, then something like shock as he registered Amara on James Whitfield's arm. He approached with his usual confident stride. "James Whitfield. What an honor." He extended his hand. "Derek Mitchell, VP at Harrington Marketing. We have been trying to secure a meeting with you for months." James shook his hand briefly. "I am aware. My assistant mentioned your company's inquiries. We have a proposal that could really benefit both our firms. Perhaps we could discuss it tonight." Derek's eyes slid to Amara. "I see you brought lovely company. This is Amara Brooks. My partner." Derek's smile froze. "Amara? We have met before." "Yes." Amara's voice was calm and steady. "At La Fontaine. Almost a year ago." Understanding dawned on Derek's face. The color drained from his cheeks as the implications became clear. The woman he had publicly rejected, the assistant he had deemed beneath him, was now standing beside one of the most powerful men in the city. Derek fumbled for words. "What a small world." "Very small," James agreed. "I witnessed your dinner that night, actually. Quite memorable." Derek swallowed hard. "Look, about that night. I was having a rough day. I am sure I came across poorly." "You came across as exactly who you are." James's tone was pleasant but cold. "A man who judges people by their bank accounts rather than their character." "Mr. Whitfield, if I could explain." "There is nothing to explain. Amara is the finest person I know. Kind, intelligent, hardworking. The fact that you could not see that tells me everything I need to know about your judgment." James smiled politely. "As for your business proposal, I think Whitfield Industries will pass. I prefer to work with people of integrity." Derek stood speechless. Around them, several nearby guests had stopped their conversations to listen. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Mr. Mitchell." James placed his hand on Amara's back and guided her away, leaving Derek standing alone by the bar, his whiskey glass trembling slightly in his hand. When they were out of earshot, Amara let out a breath she had been holding. That was unexpected. Overdue, more like. James stopped walking and turned to face her. "Are you all right?" "I think so. I spent so long letting that night define me. Feeling ashamed of who I was, of not being enough." She looked up at him. "But I am enough. I always was. You are more than enough. You are everything." For a moment the gala fell away. The music, the conversation, the hundreds of people watching. It was just the two of them, standing in the middle of a ballroom, completely focused on each other. "I love you," Amara said. "I love you too. More than I have ever loved anything." They returned to the party, but something had shifted. The encounter with Derek had been the final piece of closure Amara needed. The past was truly behind her now. The future was all that mattered. And that future was standing right beside her, holding her hand. The invitation arrived on a crisp autumn morning. It was addressed to both of them, James's name and Amara's written side by side in elegant calligraphy. The return address was the Whitfield estate. Amara held the envelope, staring at it as though it might explode. "Open it," James said, leaning against the kitchen counter with his coffee. She slid her finger under the seal and pulled out a thick card embossed with the Whitfield family crest. You are cordially invited to a family gathering at the Whitfield estate. Sunday, October 15th. 2 p.m. Cocktail attire. At the bottom, in handwriting that Amara recognized from documents she had handled for years, was a personal note. Amara, I would like to start over. Please come. Patricia. Amara read the note 3 times to make sure she was not imagining it. She wants to start over? Apparently. James set down his coffee and walked over, reading the note over her shoulder. I received a call from her last week. She has been different lately. Reflective. You did not tell me? I wanted to see if it was real first. I did not want to get your hopes up for nothing. Amara leaned into him, processing this unexpected development. Patricia Whitfield, the woman who had dismissed her as unsuitable, was asking for another chance. What changed? I think, time. And maybe seeing that I was not going to abandon you, no matter what she threatened. James wrapped his arms around her. My father's sister, my Aunt Margaret, passed away last month. They were close once before falling out over something similar. My mother holding a grudge, refusing to bend. Margaret died without them ever reconciling. I am sorry. I did not know her well. But I think it shook my mother. Made her realize that some things cannot be undone. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Do you want me to go? I want whatever you want. If you need more time, that is fine. If you never want to see her again, I understand. But if you are willing to try. He paused. I think she genuinely wants to make amends. Amara thought about kindness. About hope. About the belief that people could change, that second chances mattered, that holding on to anger only hurt the person holding it. I will go. Sunday arrived faster than expected. Amara wore a blue dress, the same one from that first terrible night at La Fontaine. It felt right somehow, wearing it to this moment of reconciliation. The estate looked different in autumn light. Softer. The harsh formality had mellowed into something almost welcoming. When they walked through the door, Patricia was waiting in the foyer. She looked older than Amara remembered. The hardness in her face had faded, replaced by something more vulnerable. She stood with her hands clasped, her posture uncertain. Amara. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. They stood in awkward silence. Then Patricia did something that shocked everyone in the room. She stepped forward and took Amara's hands in hers. I owe you an apology. Not just for my words but for my assumptions. For believing that money and status determined worth. For nearly destroying my son's happiness out of pride. Her voice wavered slightly. I have watched you both this past year. I have seen how you love him, how you care for him. I was wrong about you. I am sorry. Amara felt tears gathering in her eyes. I appreciate you saying that. I cannot promise to be perfect. Change does not happen overnight. But I would like the chance to know you properly. To be part of James's life. Of both your lives. Amara looked at James, who nodded slightly. Then she turned back to Patricia. I would like that too. Grace Brooks arrived an hour later. Olivia came with her, having been invited as Amara's closest friend. The gathering was small. Just family and the people who mattered most. They ate lunch in the garden, conversation flowing more easily than anyone expected. Patricia asked Grace about her life, about raising Amara, about their family traditions. Grace, ever gracious, shared stories that made everyone laugh. By late afternoon, the group had migrated to the terrace overlooking the rose garden. The October sun was warm and golden, casting long shadows across the lawn. James stood and cleared his throat. I have something to say. Everyone fell silent. Amara looked up at him, confused. Almost a year ago, I sat down at a table with a woman who thought she was invisible. A woman who had been made to feel small, worthless, undeserving. But what I saw that night and every night since, was someone extraordinary. Someone brave and kind and full of hope. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Amara's heart stopped. Amara Brooks. James knelt in front of her, right there on the terrace, with both their families watching. You have taught me that love is not about what you have. It is about who you are. You have made me better in every way. I cannot imagine my life without you in it. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring that caught the autumn light. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Amara's face. She looked at this man who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. Who had chosen her over money and status and family approval. Who had built something real with her, one day at a time. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. James slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. Around them their families erupted in cheers. Grace was crying. Olivia was jumping up and down. Even Patricia was smiling, a genuine smile that transformed her face. Later, as the sun set over the rose garden, Amara and James stood together at the edge of the terrace. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever dreamed I could be." "Good." He kissed her forehead. "Because this is just the beginning." They stood there in the fading light, two people who had found each other against all odds, ready to build a life together. Behind them their families mingled and laughed. Ahead of them the future stretched out, full of possibility. And Amara Brooks, who had once felt invisible, knew she would never feel that way again.